evening. Welcome to Mountain Bears. I'm Aeson, and of course, with tonight is to tell you with most techy. Joe, how are you, darling?
I'm doing well. How are you this evening?
Oh, evil as normal.
That's an option.
You what?
I said that's an option.
Yes, being evil is always a good option. Hello, Miss Brenda. How are you? All right. So, how's your week been?
Well, it's been a very busy week. But it's not been a bad week.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So, yeah. How about yours?
It's been interesting. It's been very interesting. We've
Mhm.
made some dietary changes, so that's been interesting.
It has.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, this looks interesting. Devin, darling, nice to see you bouncing in.
Hey,
So, first,
Brenda. Hey, Devin.
let's talk about a new movie coming out finally.
Oh. So Challengers is possibly the best thing that could happen to polyamory. The relationship style has been the topic of kinky articles and books. Finally, it's the sexiest element of the year's sexiest movie. So yeah. Oh, all right. So much has recently been made out of polyamory in the media to the point where the prospect of dating and ostensibly having sex with multiple people who are also attracted to you seems rather unsexy. Pieces and outlets like The Atlantic, New Yorker, and New York Times, at least twice, have taken stabs at painting portraits of polyams that have resulted in the following takeaways. Poly relationships are messy, but they will be the first ones to admit that they are messy. Poly people believe in a lot of annoying rules, except for annoying rules about monogamy. Poly people feel misunderstood, but they also have their own acronym filled language NRE, Metamor. Polyamory is either popular or not popular at all, and said contested popularity, if true, may or may not be the result of a housing crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, to be clear, I don't come to bury polyamory. I'm merely pointing out that all this seems like an exhausting hassle is what happens when something humans do their relationships becomes a media fixation. Secrets are suddenly made unsecret, and so much is lost in translation and public consumption. No one wants to write a news article that comes from a place of horniness, and with that mentality, the subject becomes a punchline. So just when you thought the entire idea of being communally entangled felt too examined, too picked over, and ever to ever be sexy again, uh, challengers come swooping in. Sun drenched and sweat soaked, the film demystifies polyamory into something blazingly simple. Being in love, physically and emotionally, with two people and being loved back can make a person as happy as they've ever been or ever will. All right.
Yeah.
So, in tennis terms, challengers are a type of B list tournament made for players in ranking purgatory, not good enough to be in the main draws of Grand Slam tournaments and not bad enough to be out of the game entirely. The title also has a double meaning, referencing the very complicated, emotionally difficult, and extremely randy tennis prodigies turned pros, Tashi Duncan, Art Donaldson, and Patrick Zweig. All right, the three are part of an intricate ball bashing love triangle, and it's no accident that every corner is so acutely hot. I'm just stopping there.
Yes, please do. But it's kind of interesting that we finally get a movie.
There's a movie. Now, granted, we haven't seen this.
No.
Um, but hey, it gets poly in the news and apparently simplified it for one person. Although the sheer amount of like wordplay here is, I part of me finds it great. The other part of me is like, oh, you hated writing this article, didn't you?
Yes, because they're having to explore deeper than what they already talk about.
Challengers is the name of the movie.
Mhm. So if we can find it, I'll watch it.
Mm-hmm.
I just hope it does not follow the same BS that most LGBT movies meet.
Okay.
Boy meets boy, boy does a coming out, boy beats boy, some Greek tragedy occurs. Oh, get past these storylines, please.
I don't know. Sometimes the there's a reason though. Sometimes it becomes a standard plot. Because
Right.
it's comfortable, it's familiar, and it. I don't think you ever run out of the well on some of them. Like it like generation to generation, you're gonna resonate with.
Well, here's my thing. We've gone through the well. We've now moved into the magma of the middle planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was from Vox.
Mm-hmm.
So if y'all are interested, um, they have a semi detailed reporting.
Right. Not that detailed. Like, it's obviously just read their press packet.
Well, I think they've maybe seen the movie, but I think it just connected on one place.
Right.
Oh, yes. Brenda says it's like Hallmark, LOL. There is a set plot, just different areas and different names.
Right.
Yes, though I will say that Hallmark has managed some, I guess one could say, if we're going to go puns this evening, distasteful.
Yeah.
Food porn rom-com.
Yes.
That was a lovely experience for you in a doctor's office full of people that have had to fast.
Hours.
Yes, many hours. As in at that, like at the point we got there,
Uh-huh.
you had been fasting for 12 hours and it was still going to be what, another 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. A note
No,
to
14.
office across the world. Um, a Hallmark channel during their romance comedy food porn, probably not gonna be your best choice for a great patient interaction. Just FYI. Like like I
Yes.
that one patient was very brazen. Yeah, that included no coffee, no water, no sodas, nothing.
NPO. Yeah. Yeah. Like the doctor was taking his life in his own hands with this order because it was actually 14 hours because the appointment wasn't till 2. And he had to go NPO at midnight.
Yeah, so 14 hours and counting, and then it was still like another 3 before you were out of there. And yeah, then we still took it long enough that it was another hour before you got to eat food.
Yeah.
So 17, 18 hours.
Yeah.
All total. Between meals or between
anything.
Mm-hmm.
Intermittent fasting is for stupid people.
Well, on the upside, when he's been like they're like poor Joe was at like 8 a.m. Um, by the time we got him wrangled into the car and headed towards the doctor's office, he was losing capacity.
Right.
So it was like having a sleepy toddler the rest of the day.
Yes. It was like, fuck off. I need a
Well,
nap.
but without the actual energy, it was more like,
Yes.
it's just that's where he's at. So, so I don't want to do this again.
Yeah, I'm gonna walk out with an order that says repeat in 3 years, and I'm like, I don't know if that'll make the calendar.
Fair enough. Oh, so
If
yeah.
so, we're doing bright and fucking early. Like evening appointments for that is bullshit.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, more so without like recalculating.
Yeah.
Like, and there was some challenges with that as well in terms of you don't keep like you're not awake normally for the majority of bankers' hours, like 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. You're not awake for that.
Right.
So it was already a challenge.
Yeah, it was like, okay, let's outfit these directions correctly. Like, they need to have 2 sets of forms, one for night shifters and one for day shifters, instead of one form that's for everybody that assumes everyone gets up at 7 o'clock in the goddamn morning.
Well, and there was the deeper issue with that, and this is in no way a slight on Aeson. It was a complicated set of instructions.
Yes.
That no one actually sat down and went, okay, how can we make this easy for patients?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like because it was very reminiscent of here's your test. Make sure you read every single question before you start.
Mm-hmm.
Because you had to read all the way through this to even figure out like what all did you need to get.
Mm-hmm.
What was your time schedule and timetable? What could you and could you not eat? Just like it was a whole thing. And it really was. It was like, do not pass go, do not collect $200, read the entire paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
And then start working through, okay, we've got to create a menu for these days. We've got to pick up these things from the store. And I'm just sitting here going, well, no wonder because like the first time you were there for a different test, there was a patient who had messed up, and it like they were on a repeat, and that doctor's office had like prejudice for patients they had to reschedule because they screwed up. And I'm sitting here going, I bet y'all do this often.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not saying you have to necessarily be a rocket scientist to figure it all out. I'm just saying it's a level of reading comprehension.
It was a Gantt chart. That's what it turned into for us, was a Gantt chart of this plus this equals this, divide by this, add to this.
Well,
like,
I mean,
oh
it wasn't that bad, but it was a process of like you could have broken this information down to ensure you have better compliance.
Right.
Because what you're handing people is because generally, at least in medical literature and what you're supposed to hand to patients, should be at about a 5th grade reading level.
Right.
And while I won't necessarily say they were writing this so technically that it exceeded that, the level of complexity and all the things one had to hold in their head as they read through this to figure out, okay, you need to get this, you have to get this, you've got to get that, and then you can't have this, you can't have that, you can't have this. Okay, now we have to take that and make a menu out of it, and then we have to figure out when you can eat it.
Mm-hmm.
And try to go through that and without like screwing any of the times up.
Right. And consult your other doctors to make sure that you can do the process. If not, they need to adapt the process for you.
Right. Well, but then go one step further, and then we have to figure out the timings.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, okay, well, you can't take a week.
Right.
And just go day shifter
to
make this happen.
Right.
Because that's like, that's the point where it's almost like, oh, just call the fucking doctor's office back and cancel.
Right.
Like, this is ridiculous.
Yes.
This
it
is
was
a test. It's a trial by fire.
Yes. And if you messed up any step, it would have messed up the test. And it's like, are you serious?
Yeah. And honestly, could have easily messed it up. Easily messed it up.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's one of those things. It's like, there's better ways to do this.
Yes.
Like, there's so many better ways to do this.
Right.
And quite frankly, it almost needed to come with the meal plan.
Right.
Because trying to take the list of alloweds,
right,
and figure out, okay, what the hell do you make with that?
Right.
Because that's mostly what he had to keep to is you're allowed to have this, you're allowed to have that, you're allowed to have this, because anything not on their paper, except for some of the things on the paper are things you're not allowed, so read that section carefully.
Right.
But generally, if it isn't on the piece of paper, you can't have it.
Right.
It'll mess up the test.
Right.
You can't have it, we'll mess up the test.
Right.
And it's like, y'all, if we're going to get this persnickety, you almost have to give someone a meal plan.
Yeah.
Like, make that the upper 4 pages.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a little booklet.
Yeah.
And it like, someone sat down in Word and just started typing.
Mm-hmm.
And it like chased itself around and everything else. It was insane.
What that mean?
I mean, we didn't really struggle with it. Like, you were having a little bit of a struggle with it because it kept jumping back and forth and what do I need? How do I need it? And like trying to answer all the questions. Because part of this was also you were coming off of the first test, which required you to skip meds, and now we're doing the second test that requires you to skip meds back to back.
Yeah,
you're like, here, figure it out. I can't. Like, I can't.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're sitting there with that, and I'm going through it, and it's not that I'm struggling so hard to read it,
right?
But I'm sitting here going, I don't know that your average patient can be expected to successfully follow this to the letter.
Right.
Now, if you want to play an 80-20 game, you might get most of them at 80% of following this.
Right.
But I'm going to guarantee you that some people had some crap moments.
Right.
For different reasons.
It was just insane, and I'm like, and what was worse is they miscalculated dates. They miscalculated, like they said, no vegetables, but then had potatoes. And I'm like,
that's a vegetable.
That's a vegetable.
Right. And like it was a very contradicting, like self-contradicting document.
Yeah.
So like trying to sit there and read through it and then figure out really quickly that she was off her game that day because you had to work with a receptionist that had to fill all this out and was supposed to get all your dates. Meanwhile, like in the same moment, she's scheduling you for 3 medical tests. One has a booklet that has to be filled in to tell you when to do what and how. That's already a hot mess to begin with. Then she's having and calculate the days. And then, like, on top of all this, she had just gotten back, I believe, or someone had just worked at her desk and, like, rearranged everything. Either which way it went, she was struggling.
Yeah.
She was having to fill out all the appointment cards, set up all the procedures, give you all the paperwork, do all the things. And then by the time she got to this booklet, she was done.
Yeah.
Like, before she started to fill in, she was done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
it was so complicated, the nurse messed up in filling it out. And I'm like, okay, so we got to start this over. And first step is contact SuperDoc and go, okay, I am diabetic. I am on heart medicine. What adaptations do we need to follow? You know, like all this other crap.
Okay to just follow it as is. I'm okay to skip my meds. Like, what meds do I have to take? Yeah. So yeah, it was a little sit down and basically make a little playbook.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, this is what we're doing, and this is what we're doing, and this is what we're doing, and this is what you absolutely cannot take this week. And yeah, you got to remember this.
Right.
And just because literally I was drawing little boxes on it to like group information between, okay, let's create a menu, let's get a shopping list together, like for the like medications and stuff you had to take, and then get a shopping list together of the food we have to buy.
Yeah, and a shopping
figure out your timetable and recalculate all for bad dates. It was, oh my god.
Yeah, and then calculate my work schedule and rebalance it, and it's like, oh, you're shit here. Yeah. All right. So moving on, the DEA is actually doing something useful for once.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit on Tuesday. So from a different perspective, scientists welcome new rules on marijuana, but research will still face obstacles. So as the Biden administration moves to reclassify marijuana as a less dangerous drug, scientists say the change will lift some of the restrictions on studying the drug. But the change won't lift all restrictions, they say. Neither will it decrease potential risks of the drug or help users better understand what those risks are. Marijuana is currently classified as a Schedule I controlled substance, which is defined as a substance with no accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. The Biden administration proposed this week to classify cannabis as a Schedule III controlled substance, a category that acknowledges it has some medical benefits. The current Schedule I status imposes many regulations and restrictions on scientists' ability to study weed, even as state laws have made it increasingly available to the public. Cannabis is a Schedule I substance. Cannabis as a Schedule I substance is associated with a number of very, very restrictive regulations, says neuroscientist Stacy Gruber at McLean Hospital and Harvard Medical School. You have a very stringent requirement, for example, for storage and security and reporting all of these things. These requirements are set by the Food and Drug Administration, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Institutional Review Board, and local authorities, she says. Scientists interested in studying the drug also have to register with the DEA and get a state and federal license to conduct research on the drug. It's a burdensome process, and it is certainly a process that has prevented a number of young and rather invested researchers from pursuing this kind of work, says Gruber. Reclassifying the drug as Schedule III puts it in the same category as ketamine and Tylenol with codeine. Substances in this category have accepted medical use in the United States, have less potential for abuse than in higher categories, and abuse could lead to low to moderate levels of dependence on the drug. This reclassification is a very, very big paradigm shift, says Gruber. I think that that has a big trickle-down effect in terms of the perspectives and the attitudes with regard to the actual sort of differences between excuse me, studying Schedule 3 versus Schedule 1 substances. Gruber welcomes the change, particularly for what it will mean for younger colleagues. For researchers who are looking to get into the game, it will be easier. You don't have to have a Schedule 1 license, she says. That's a big deal.
Right, but this also means that, like, CVS could be carrying marijuana. And granted, it's either going to be in liquid or pill form or something like that, or inhaler form. But, you know, this reclassification is a big thing.
Well, and it also changes how we. I mean, there's a big perceptual difference as well.
Right.
Like if you're sitting and talking about methamphetamine, for example,
Right.
Another Schedule 1 drug, I would assume. I haven't looked it up, but I can't imagine it has a known use. I believe methamphetamine is definitely a Schedule 1. But in that regard, there's been a lot of anger around the fact, quite frankly, that cannabis has been in the Schedule 1 category for many years.
Right.
That it's not the same. It is a ridiculous classification for the drug.
Right.
It has always been ridiculous.
It is a Schedule 2 drug.
Oh, methamphetamine?
Mm-hmm. Because there is.
All right. So what's our? I really would have thought. Okay. So what are our Schedule 1 drugs?
Schedule 1 drugs are oral opiums.
Okay. That's a nice one. So the lovely poppy fields that we use for terminal patients to relieve pain. Yes.
Yep.
So
LSD, ecstasy, and currently cannabis.
Really, methamphetamine only made it to Schedule 2?
Yep, because it's a use in adrenal therapy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you learn something new every day.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Schedule 1 narcotics,
Right.
like opium, that are generally deemed to have no high risk of abuse and almost zero medical usage.
Right.
We will still, however, give opium, we would gladly give that to a cancer patient and be like, enjoy your trip, safe travels.
Right.
I mean, not to be crude, but enjoy your trip, safe travels.
Right. But no, opium has its uses too. But the problem is that all these drugs were affected in the mid 1900s into the late 20s and 30s with morality clauses. So there's not been really much study.
Well, yeah, there was. Well, and then there's the association with quote unquote certain communities.
Mm-hmm.
So between the moral panic outrage of, recreational drug use,
right,
coupled with the ability to target communities, not because there was more prevalent usage, please keep that in mind, but because there was already a known willingness to only see prevalent usage in certain places, versus actually arresting people for what they were doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you're not clear on that, white people don't get arrested much for drug use.
Right.
Is how that works out. Is we turn a blind eye, we do lighter sentencing
Right.
for Caucasian persons.
Mainly
And
for
then we
Asian males.
throw the book at. And a lot of that was built around a political desire
Right.
to remove people of color from voting. Because you go to prison,
Mm-hmm.
you'll lose your voting rights.
Right. Well, but the other side of that is it's a lot. Cisgendered Caucasian males tend to not get arrested for drugs as much as other communities. Mm-hmm.
It's not because they're doing less drugs.
Right.
And that's the key part. And there's actually research on that that's basically pointed that out. Is
Mm-hmm.
if there is a less prevalence,
Right.
I believe it's almost in the margin of error.
Right.
That we're talking about like individual percentage points. It's not a vastly different community.
Right.
That we're talking 20, 30, 40, 50 percentage
Right.
points. It's white upper middle class America is not doing less drugs.
Right.
They're just doing them without the legal ramifications.
Correct.
Because we don't want to put pretty white people in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have their whole lives in front of them and this one mistake that they made.
Mm-hmm. Don't make me
ruin
bark.
their
We had
future.
a lovely dinner.
Pardon?
Don't make me bark. We had a lovely dinner.
Hey, I'm just saying this is how that conversation usually goes. And and when we see it across and we see it in other things, like pretty little white boys rape white girls.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so horrible for him.
Right.
You turn that around and make that a story about any that involves anyone of color.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem.
Right.
That's not the like his future is not a problem.
Right.
We don't care about his future.
Right.
And we see that in sentencing.
Yes.
Is quite frankly,
Mm-hmm.
it's ridiculous. So yeah.
So yeah, it's past level of ridiculous. All right, I found. Well, it was on my timeline. A fun article I thought we'd look at,
Oh, fine.
coming from Pride.
Oh yes. So 15 reasons age gaps don't matter for gay and bi men.
Uh-huh.
Oh, fun.
I thought we would see which ones we agree with.
All right. Well, number one is our business is our own. First and foremost, simply put, it's basically the same as any other relationship. None of your business, really. If the gap in age doesn't matter to us, it shouldn't matter to you either.
I agree with this one. It's nobody's damn business about who's going into somebody else's bedroom.
Well, there is that. So number two is coming out is not a linear process. We'll talk about maturity levels a little later, but being gay is in a league of its own when it comes to figuring out who you are. A lot of men don't come out until later in life, and some may even may even already have kids or families that they've left. Younger gay men understand that it's never easy to come out, so sometimes dating an older man who's just come to terms with his sexuality is just as good as dating someone your own age.
Yeah. I don't agree with that one being part of this process.
I can disagree with that and say that no, I can see that one is that if you're talking about like an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old who's just come out and a 45-year-old who's just come out, while they've had different and longer duration life experiences, they're effectively kind of on the same path at the same point.
Right.
It's not like they're running two entirely different life tracks.
Right.
And with the major reset of a divorce, because I think anyone who's been through one calls that a pretty major life reset.
Right.
It really does. It's starting over like you're, in a sense, like you're a kid again who just turned
Right.
18.
Right.
Unfortunately, usefully, but unfortunately, sometimes with child support.
Or
All right.
fortunately with, the control of the children. All right.
Well,
So number 3, you know
yes.
how to ignore unwanted opinions. Agreed.
Yes, there are plenty of opinions when it comes to gay men dating each other from totally opposite ends of the age spectrum. Fortunately, neither one of you are likely to care. You both know what you want, and you're both willing to go after it, and more often than not, that's all you'll need. So number 4, there's a good level of trust. Trust and communication are important factors in any relationship, and there's something about the age gap that brings that about. The older person in the couple has been through life and is more likely to know how to set and create boundaries, and the younger counterpart is open to learning what they need.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I think that's in all gay relationships.
Well, but I think there is something to be said for like matching up as someone who's going through life and just figuring this out, and someone who's been around the block a couple of times and goes, yeah, I know what this is.
Right.
And I can say that there's
right.
It is one instance where like an older younger relationship can mesh up a little better, because when you have two people of the same age, especially younger, that are just figuring it out, sometimes just figuring it out together isn't the best way to figure it out.
Right.
Because there's a lot of pressure. Having a partner that's like, I hear what you're saying. I also see what you're doing.
Right.
And
I tried that. It doesn't work well.
Yeah. Well, or what I was going to continue and say was that the at least the recognition that I understand that's who you want to be versus who you're struggling with being.
Right.
So number 5, we can learn a lot from each other. Everyone is from different walks of life always. The younger one in the couple can learn a lot from the life experiences of their elder partner. Likewise, the younger partner also brings out the youth and free spirit of the elder partner, which creates a beautiful yin-yang balance that allows us to learn equally from each other.
Right. I agree with that.
Is it just me, or does it seem like it actually tends to work out like opposites? Like a lot of the couples I've seen, and part of, like, because I have older exes. I always felt like I was the more mature one, and they weren't. You know what I mean? Sort of like they had just been an adult by disguise only. And they basically just hit a career point where they now have money to burn. So now they're running around like a teenager with way too much money. For the fact that they're more further along in their careers. And then I'm coming along like, you can't do that.
And it's like, watch me. But my older partners were all, I think I was more mature in some ways. They were more mature in other ways. And it blended very well. Yeah.
So yeah, there is that. So I'll go about 50-50 on that.
Right.
So 6, we share similar experiences regardless of age. Just by being part of a marginalized group, the LGBT community, we share similar experiences. All gay bi men who are openly dating and identifying as gay or bi had to come out at some point in their lives. Many of us have strained relationships with our families. We all know what it's like to face discrimination and homophobia. We know what it's like to be the outsider. Age doesn't affect that. We all share certain experiences just by being queer. I think that's accurate. I think that one's probably 100% accurate.
I'll give it 20.
Okay.
Yeah, because this one's going to be regardless.
It is, but I think sometimes the pairing of like a mature response and a less mature response might go together.
Right.
Like, just saying.
Right.
Sometimes, having, again,
Right.
more experience
Right.
and seeing how things work out.
Right.
Because what I have noticed is in, say, younger and younger couples,
Right.
or both younger members of a relationship, is that there can tend to be a lot of rage that kind of feeds it off of each other.
Right.
And so there's a lot of anger, like that as you're going through the rough transitions. That there can be a lot of like building, fueling anger. That by the time you're like 20, 15, 20 years down the road, you realize that doesn't go anywhere good.
Right.
Normally speaking. That it can be a very dangerous combination.
Right.
To have two people that are equally outraged together.
Right.
That they start making life choices that are not good.
Agreed.
So yeah. So 7, our dating pool is limited. Our dating pool is tiny. Even when we live in a big metropolitan city, our dating pool is still shockingly small. So if we were to limit ourselves to dating men only within a 2-year range of our own, we would be making our dating pool even smaller. Most queer men can't afford to do that. Dating is already tough as is.
You see, I disagree with that, but of course, I've had a different experience.
Okay. Well, I think it also opens the door.
Right.
Like if you want to know where online dating really got a push, I think the LGBT community is certainly part of it.
Right.
Because it does kind of over time start to make you realize that if you're not willing to move, then you're probably going to end up dating, one of these 30 people.
Right. Or all of them.
Regardless of where you are. And it only gets worse the more rural you are.
Right.
Like you'll be dating one of these 3 people.
Right.
Pick one. Or go polyamorous and, I don't know, date 3 of them. But either which way it goes, you can have a limited dating pool.
Right.
Especially if you're not, like if you're trying to keep it really tight and at like 4 years, the 2 and 2 on either side of your age, it's a very tight, it's a small pool. It's kiddie.
Right.
Like it's very small. It's a puddle.
True.
Yeah.
All right. Gay bi men range in the level of maturity. We all know a 22-year-old that has a soul of 40, and we all know the opposite, a 50-year-old who acts like they're 22. normally around 2 o'clock in the morning every Saturday night, but okay. Um, one level of maturity is more important than the years they were born. I would agree with that.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with it. I'm just going to point out, I think this whole age range of maturity thing is like y'all are getting a little repetitive here.
Yes.
Like you pretty much said the same thing like 4 times now. So I'm
Right.
not disagreeing.
Right.
I think it's nuance on the subject, but it's still like that doesn't seem like a whole reason.
Right.
So, but we'll move on to 9. Many of us don't want kids. Not wanting kids makes it easier to not care about age gaps. I think there would be a lot of challenges regardless of sexual orientation if a 22-year-old and a 50-year-old had kids together. But if you don't want kids, you don't have to worry about any of that.
I'll give that one.
Really? Because I think 50-year-old men who date 22-year-olds do not have a problem with this.
Well, agreed, but also I think that, I don't know, maybe I'm sitting in my jaded glasses. But I never wanted children. When you have children in a relationship, it's more complicated.
I mean, it does. Like, my general theory was if I was going to have children with someone, I needed to meet them no later than 30.
Mm-hmm.
Because by 35, I needed to be 100% sure. Like, that was going to be the cutoff, is like, I wanted to be in a 5-year relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would consider, like adopting.
Right.
Because it was like, but once I start eking towards 40,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I want to start having kids at 40.
Right.
Like it started making me a little, I don't know that I want to do this now.
Right.
So like that, and so that was my idea. That was my plan.
Yeah.
Was kids by 35 or bust.
Right.
Like we're doing this. It's after a 5-year relationship, and like we're doing it by 35 or we're not. We're just
right.
I'm out.
Right.
Because that starts getting into an older parent set where I'm basically old enough to be your grandparent.
Right.
And it's like that comes, and from my own life experience, that comes with some issues.
Right.
I had older parents. They were in their mid 40s when they had me. And it's a struggle.
Right.
Like that's I mean,
but we also, even if I think it's what is there 3 years between us?
Well, yes.
Yeah. So even with 3 years, we had technically it's 3 years. We had 2 different views. Me growing up and coming out, children off the table. Like take that card, put it somewhere else. Marriage off the table. Take that card and put that someplace else. Like those weren't experiences I planned to have in life.
Oh, see, my theory was that like, okay, well, it's not going to be a marriage, but I'm going to come out. I'm going to meet the perfect partner within 6 months, and then within then 5 years from now. So
Right.
when I was like 24, I'd be ready to adopt. That was my game plan.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, it was adorably cute.
Yeah.
Obviously from the jaded commentary, that didn't happen. And good lord.
See, I never bought into the heteronormal brainwashing of the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Like that just wasn't me. I can't, I came up with older gays and had older ideas of what gay life looked like. Like, you buy a house, you build your finances, you build your business, you depend on nobody, you find a partner that works with you, things are good. And if the world ends, well, guess what? You still have your foundation and you start back over.
I don't know. I was kind of granted, I don't think I had a non-heteronormative idea of gay life at that point.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, all I had was like media representation, and the only good representation
Mm-hmm.
of, someone who wasn't bitter, jealous, and basically out of control, was this like repetitive pattern of, oh, we we're a family, we're not married, but we've been together for years.
Mm-hmm.
We adopted, we foster, we et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that was basically all I had to model from.
Right.
Which wasn't all that, far off the like straight mark.
Right.
Either which way you go.
You really needed each
So
to go.
yeah, I kind of, when I first came out, I didn't have anything else to work with, so I just
Right.
kind of figured, 6 months, I'll find someone,
Right.
and then and yeah,
Right.
that I had eye-opening moments in that belief system that shattered that.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know. If we want to talk media, probably the most influential media when it came out was Queer as Folk, and I always saw myself as Brian.
who basically adopted Justin.
Yeah.
I mean, all X-rated on that, but
Right.
I mean, it was definitely some single daddyhood for him for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying, it was.
Right.
It was very, but even that just came across like there were issues with that. Because technically Justin was underage.
Mm-hmm.
And like I never, like, I have appreciation on some levels. And I mean, when we say underage, we are talking about he was like 17.
He was like 17 and
I
9 months or
don't
something
quote
like
me on
that.
that. I mean, it could have been portrayed much worse.
Right.
But even as it was portrayed, it didn't set well for me. It's like, no, hi, no, what the hell? I don't particularly love this representation,
Mm-hmm.
but okay, this is where we're at. All right, this is what we got going on for us. At least it's a popular show on a major network.
Right.
Is sort of where I ended up on that.
See, I was on the opposite end of that one.
Hmm.
Yeah, Justin was 17 in so many months. So he turned
Yeah.
18 as Justin was telling his mother where to go fuck off at.
Right. And I think that's the only way you can write that without creating a lot of ick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is to just push it right to the outer limits, and then
Right.
be like, oh, he's going to be an adult in a few months.
Right.
I still have ick with that. It's like,
Right.
or you could just wait a few months, like, suck it up. It sucks. A lot of us went through this. You know.
Right.
Uh,
But yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Number 10, we realize what stage in life we are in is more important.
So yeah, apparently this one states, I've dated men many years, my senior and junior. What I've realized is that the stage of life you're in is more important than your actual age. So if one of you is still an undergrad and the other is CEO of a Fortune 500 company, then you're at really different stages in your life. It makes it difficult to engage and relate to one another. But if you're both in grad school, it doesn't really matter if the guy you're dating is 20 years older or younger than you. Again, it's kind of going back to the same life path concept, like you're the same point in your life. I don't disagree, but I think that kind of sometimes sanitizes away that no, there's a fair number of CEOs of Fortune 500 companies that would gladly date a 22-year-old undergrad.
Mm-hmm. Right. And, with that, again, I call bullshit because I date both older and younger. Older men have their benefits, younger men have their benefits. Realizing what's no, fuck stage. I've had a 62-year-old that'll leave a 22-year-old in the dust when it comes to romance, when it comes to planning, when it comes to organizing.
So number 11, we still have fun well into our old age. Queer men have fun well into their later years. There's nothing shameful about going out to a gay bar in your 50s. You can still do fun things with your boyfriend, regardless of his age. We know you're never too young, never too old to have a little fun.
I disagree. It is not the same. Okay?
Yeah.
Going out to a gay bar in your 50s and 60s is not the same as going out to a gay bar in your 20s. The big difference is the black card.
Well, it does make a difference. I was going to say that kind of, I mean, I don't think it's exactly wrong. But I think it also feeds into a stereotype of who we're supposed to be.
Right.
At different ages in our life and
right.
how we're supposed to be. And I think there's a cross, like, 70-year-olds aren't 70-year-olds anymore, okay? Like, I don't care if they're gay, straight, bi, trans, whatever. 70-year-olds aren't 70-year-olds anymore. Like, they have not, like, I'm sorry, I think back to my childhood. 70-year-olds were really old people who stayed home.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you turn, like somewhere between 50 and 70, you just, like, turned in your fun card.
Right.
And you just became a homebody and you didn't go out anymore.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know, you got bored and got a cat and learned to cook shit. And that's not really, like, we've challenged that across, like, all communities, I think.
Right.
Like, 70-year-olds aren't 70-year-olds anymore. They're just not. They're not the same. It's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the most endangered species on the planet is a cookie baking grandma.
I would agree, and depending on what type of cookies she's baking.
I mean, like, does gray hair exist now?
I haven't seen much pink hair in years, though.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we're, like, a lot of things have changed.
Uh-huh.
And plastic surgery's made some of that possible. Better health, better life choices have made some of that more possible. Legalized marijuana has made some of that more possible.
Right.
May I point out. Just saying.
Right.
We all know someone over the age of 50 who is regularly, like, if they're a cookie baking grandma, I don't suggest you eat those cookies without asking, are they laced with anything?
Exactly.
Just saying. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Cookie baking grandmas that are not baking laced ass cookies are an endangered species.
Yes. Very much so.
Just saying.
All right. Number 12. Good sex is good sex. I finally agree with one.
All right. So when the sex is good, it doesn't matter how old or young you are, as long as you're past the age of consent. Older gay men have years of sexual experience making them beasts in the bedroom, and younger gay men have novel excitement that comes from not having boned a bunch of times yet. See, I actually kind of disagree with this one. Is
Okay.
you just made a whole argument earlier in the list, and
Uh-huh.
now you're doing like broad generalization that all older gay men are more experienced. And
No,
it's
they're
like,
not.
what?
Yeah.
Like again, I can't. I mean, sex is sex, and sex is good as long as everyone's consenting, and I don't have a problem with that. Um, but just because of someone's age doesn't necessarily mean they're more experienced.
Or
Um,
better.
just because someone's younger doesn't mean that like they're still so new at it they don't know which hole to use.
Right.
You know what I mean? And sorry
Mhm.
for anyone reacting in shock to that line. It's actually from a movie called Lust in the Dust. Um, but it's a John Waters film. You'll love it. You probably
Yes.
won't. But anyhow, I don't think it's always untrue. I think though that's kind of a broad sweeping generalization.
Right.
That kind of argues with the rest of this argument.
Hmm.
So I take issues with that.
Well, I take
Next.
issues with it, with thinking that older men have better standards. I take issues with
Yes,
younger
Lust in the
men not having.
Dust divine.
Yes.
So 13, daddies are in. I recognize how it's somewhat bizarre to say that daddies are hip, so to speak. But a number of young queer men, myself included, if we're calling late 20s young, want some daddies in our lives. There's not only an international party, but also a print magazine called Daddy Issues. Daddies are finally having their rightful heyday. Now that gay men are making it to an age in which being called a daddy does not hurt.
I don't
Um,
want to hear it.
I think that's probably an important thing to point out. So with the 80s HIV/AIDS crisis,
Hmm.
we saw some heavy decimation to like our generation didn't really have a lot of daddies. Like there were some, usually, but
Yeah.
I think daddies as a community or as a like
Right.
represented group that is larger, it took a while
It
because a
did.
lot of future daddies didn't make it out of their 20s and 30s.
Right. But but I have issue.
Okay.
Like I've been called a daddy since I was like 24. Well, Pape. But it's like come the Hades on.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a difference between someone living out a fantasy in the bedroom and taking you on a ride with it,
Hmm.
literally and figuratively, is one thing. But I mean, the actual, like, hi,
Right.
this is a group of men over 50,
Right.
which
Fine.
I think is the appropriate age for someone to legitimately become a daddy.
Okay. But no, like finally, and that's a thing. But I think daddies have always been hip. They've always been rare. Like true daddies are were a rarity. And I've always been the hip thing. So, you know, daddies are finally hip. I don't find that useful, dude.
Brenda says, "Yeah, boy, you gave that caretaking dad energy."
Yes, I do.
Uh, I don't know. I'm in my 40s, finally starting to move from "call me a daddy, I will punch you in the face" to "call me a daddy, I will slap you mildly."
Uh huh.
Like that's where I'm at with, like, I feel the closer I approach 50, the safer it's getting for someone to call me daddy.
Yeah, and for me,
like it's still not a very safe decision.
Right. And for me, it's like whatever. Like if it fits, it fits.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So 14, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. Years ago, when there was no internet or ways of connecting with other gay men through apps, it was particularly difficult to meet other queer people, especially as a young person. Having an older gay man to help answer your questions, teach you about gay culture, and make you feel less alone saved younger gay kids' lives. Older gays also gain a sense of pride as a protector and educator, acting as a mentor to these young men. Today, even with gay apps, having an older-younger relationship is still good for burgeoning young queers and older gay men.
Did we forget bars existed, cruising existed? Like, it wasn't the Stone Age, you people.
You know, we weren't communicating by carrier pigeon. Like, hi. Right. But at the same time, I have to agree with it for now. I have lots of issues of how they're referring to the past. And as if that was entirely everything there was. A lot of at least for my generation, and I know some before me, older gay men weren't always your protector and educator. They may have taught you some lessons, but not from a loving, protective mentorship kind of way.
Right.
Like the terminology used to be chicken hawk. And it referred to predatory older men who went after younger, less experienced men. Right. You learned a lot, and usually all in pain, because many of those men were predatory. They were taking advantage of naive younger men. Like, that's what they did.
Understandable. You know, and that was the behavior, and it's still the behavior. And number 15, we're not even going to cover because it's like, oh, give me a break. Like, did you run out of options on what to write?
Yeah. Number 15 is kind of like, hi, date me.
Yeah, like, is this your singles ad, dude?
You know, sometimes you just got to fill column space. Is all I can go with on that.
Well, that's all I can go with most of this article. So,
fair enough.
Age gaps don't really apply in relationships. What comes to my problem with age gap relationships is when the older one is stuck in an idea and not changing the idea. Because every partner is different. Everything is different.
It is. So yeah, but no, I think anyone's fine to date anyone legal and consenting.
Right.
So long as they're capable of being a good partner.
Right.
Like, that's kind of the end of the day is, you know, if this is what makes you happy, go enjoy.
Right.
I think for some, though, the judgment is more about themselves. As in, when you're talking about judging an older, younger relationship, I think it ends up being very telling what people say. Right. Because often I think it either tells you who they are or what their experience has been.
Right.
Like the person that shows up is like, you know, he's just going to leave you. Is that what happened to them? Is that what they did to their younger partner?
Right. Or
Like,
yeah, the younger partner should, this was said, you're just going to age out.
okay. As in, it's like this is a predatory older partner, and like they're basically one step off a pedophile. That you're viable from this age to this age, and then you'll get
Right.
replaced.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of assumptions there. Because you're starting at the older member of this couple is literally a predatory groomer.
Right.
That's a harsh accusation. I think
Right.
you got to be able to back that up.
Right.
Otherwise, just saying it as a broad, statement, yeah, that's garbage.
Right. Well, and it's normally a partner that was dumped or replaced that has the gall to say that.
It can definitely be that. Yeah. Only in it for the money. That's another common one. That they're only together because it's basically a financial arrangement for pleasure.
Right.
Again, I think is very telling about what you think of relationships in general. That you have a transactional relationship problem.
Right.
In the sense that you don't have the ability to actually connect with people. You view relationships more transactional.
Right. Yeah, gold digger is a very common one, and it's like, oh, give me a break. There's no gold to dig. Normally, the ex-wife dug every dime out of it.
Well, it doesn't even have to require an ex-wife. A fair number of relationships that you look at, it's like, yeah, we're talking gold flake at this point. That's not really where this is at.
Right.
Good credit does a lot, and if you're desperate enough, yeah, it can be a step up. And I'm again not knocking that for anyone. You can make a very good life together.
Right.
But it's not the same as gold digging.
Right.
Like,
No.
Looking for someone that maybe can offer you more stability instead of youthful impulsiveness is probably more in line with where that's at. But again, when people say that, I think what they're really talking about is they've mostly been propositioned for solicitation.
Right. The other side of that is, a lot of bull crap about, oh, you must have daddy issues. Only if he's late for dinner is my comment back.
I think sometimes that one can come into play if there's a toxic dynamic. As in, if there's a lot of similarity between actual bio dad and partner, and this is an unhealthy relationship of just trying to grab attention in that pick me, choose me, love me, Grey's Anatomy kind of way, that's a daddy issue.
Right.
But I think that's far more rare.
Right.
At least to the extent that it starts influencing who you date.
Right. All right. So, do you have an Are You the Asshole?
I do not.
Ooh, mousy, go to work. Ooh, this is interesting. Here we go. The mouse chose. Boom.
All right. Am I the asshole for taking back a gift after I learned the birthday person would not be the one using it? My daughter, Jenny, 13, has a best friend, Morgan, nearly 13. The two of them spend a lot of time together at our place. I do not know Morgan's mother very well, as Jenny doesn't often go to their house. This is mainly because Morgan's house is a little chaotic. She has 4 siblings. Jenny is an only child, and Morgan has said she likes the quiet. Morgan has done a lot of stuff with us. I occasionally enter radio online competitions and will win tickets to certain local events. When I won 4 tickets to a concert last year, Jenny and I brought Morgan along with one other friend. We all had a blast. Recently, I won another pair of tickets to a concert that I plan to attend with Jenny. A few days after, I was told about a work trip that I have to take that falls that weekend. Jenny usually comes with me, so Jenny suggested we give the tickets to Morgan for her birthday. She could either go with another friend or her mom. I checked with Morgan's mom before we mentioned this to Morgan, and she said that was fine. Last night, Morgan was at our house and seemed upset. When I asked why, she said her mom was taking her brother to the concert because her brother has never been to a concert before. I asked if Morgan's brother even liked the band, and Morgan said no. It was just the principle of the matter. Morgan and her other 3 siblings have been to concerts. He hasn't, and since they can't afford stuff like this, he gets to go. I found this unfair and honestly a waste of tickets. I called Morgan's mom to double check the story, and she confirmed it, including her 11-year-old son barely knowing anything about the band. I said, I'm sorry, but I don't feel right giving these as a birthday gift anymore, as these were for Morgan. I said we'd give them to Jenny and Morgan's other friend, who I know likes the band, and we'll get Morgan something else for her birthday. Morgan is fine with this. Morgan's mom is pissed and says I'm trying to tell her how to parent. I don't think I am, because if a different friend gave Morgan the tickets and it was the same result, as shitty as I find her mom doing this, I wouldn't say anything, as that's not my business. As I am giving the tickets, I want them to go to Morgan. I'd also maybe feel different if the brother loved the band too, but as he doesn't, I don't want to give them. So here I am, left wondering if I'm being an ass here.
No, you're not being an ass. There's other options. Morgan could have went with her brother to the concert. Not a hard choice.
There's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
Like, because basically, Morgan already knows she's getting the tickets for her, or was supposed to get the tickets for her birthday.
Right.
So it's basically an open birthday present, this one.
Right.
Because she checked with Morgan's mom, and I'm guessing told Morgan what they were going to do.
Right.
Which in turn led Morgan's mother to reassign the tickets, basically.
Right.
Take the gift away before she got it, to give to Morgan's brother, effectively.
Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with not the asshole. I think Morgan's mom is kind of a hot mess.
Right.
Like, we spell frugal CHEAP, and kindness with a slap.
Right.
like there's a lot going wrong here. I even at this point feel bad for Morgan's brother.
Right.
One, your parents aren't even getting you an original gift or a gift that has any meaning other than a checklist item of taking you to a concert.
Right.
Which they're effectively recycling by taking it away from your sister that would actually want to go to the concert.
Exactly.
I don't think it's telling anyone how to parent. I do think it probably shines a very bright light of you're sucking at parenting.
Yeah.
Again, I kind of get it. I would get it a little more if Morgan was like, oh, I don't really like this band or care to go. And the brother was like, "Ooh, I've never been to a concert, and I love this band. I want to go." That would be a reasonable recycle.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, honey, here's the $50 that the tickets are worth, or some, like, here's a gift exchange.
Exactly.
Like, you give him the tickets, we'll get you a different gift. We'll, all call it a fun time for everyone.
Right.
Yeah, not the asshole.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, I'm a little weird about taking back gifts after someone, like, you've already told them what you're getting.
Right.
And I'll make an exception.
Right.
Like, this ended as badly as it could have.
Right. So the poll is up. It's yes, you're an asshole. No, you're not an asshole. Everyone is shitty here, or damn, you're a deal pickle. You can vote for that over on the Aeson Night YouTube page. All right. So moving into poly advice.
Help! My 41 female partner, 40 non-binary, and I have been married for 5 years. They were poly when we met, and I've always been mono. We had a whirlwind romance, and early on they chose to be monogamous, as that was a hard line for me. Our relationship has had its ups and downs, but we have had so many beautiful experiences together, and the love is there. Recently, we've both experienced some horrible losses in our lives, and at first brought us closer together. However, they've recently given me the ultimatum that they want to open our relationship or divorce. Since then, we've been incredibly distant and harsh. They are upset that I won't even consider it or look into it or talk to people about how it could work out for us. Honestly, I don't know any happily poly people, which is why I'm here. Is anyone willing to have a conversation with me so I can hear other perspectives about it? I don't want to lose them, and I'm really struggling. I'm extremely vulnerable right now, so please no comments about us just breaking up. This is someone that I've considered to be my person for the rest of my life. Breaking up is hard to hear. I mean, tell me you want help, but then cut off the help, the rope that you were thrown.
Right. Here's the thing. You can't live together. You can't. They want something other than you do. So you either pay the cost of admission, and they're gone every Wednesday night, or you divorce. It's a split, easy decision.
I kind of think the problem was at the beginning.
Right.
It was probably a lot for them to choose to be monogamous.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that recent issues have kind of created a 5-car pilot.
Right.
I had to give this up about myself. Now I've lost this, and now this has happened, and it's kind of that moment that, like, through the wreckage, what can I salvage of me?
Right.
And unfortunately, that salvage item is poly or bust.
Right.
You say already you don't want to do this, but then it sounds like you're willing on some level to do poly by duress.
Right.
I can go ahead and tell you no one who does poly by duress is happy.
Right.
Because fundamentally, square peg, round hole, there's a whole thing about that. Poly by duress explicitly does not work out.
Right.
So where you're at right now is you're borderlining a divorce that you don't want, and trying to convince yourself that you'll do anything, including polyamory, or at least tolerating it, and I put that in air quotes, to avoid the divorce. The reality is, I don't think breaking up is the first thing you need to do. Finding a good therapist, however, is.
Right.
Because you're headed into a divorce you don't want.
Right.
That you're willing to compromise yourself to avoid by doing things that aren't you. I don't think you can talk anyone into polyamory that isn't remotely interested.
Exactly.
Like, there's nothing anyone's going to say about polyamory that's going to be like, oh, I'm totally on board now.
Right.
Like,
see,
no, it's just
side
been
of
fun for
this
you.
where I'm going to sound like the bitch, but the poly person's mistake was as soon as you said mono, they should have said, sorry, I'm out.
Yeah. Like, there is, and again, sometimes in mid-30s, sometimes you do feel the clock ticking down. So I can start to understand that you did some horse trading.
Right.
For someone who seemed really great from due to NRE, most likely.
Right.
That you started as the partner, not the OP, and went, well, I can do monogamy.
Right.
You know, I'll board that part of myself up and put polyamory in a bento box and shove it on a shelf.
Right.
Here's what happens, unfortunately, when you take who you are and you put it in a bento box and you shove it on a shelf.
Right.
You frequently end up running into life experiences that shake the closet, and that bento box explodes all over the place in the worst ways possible. Right. Before getting married would have been a much better time to have had the poly or bust concept.
Right.
That's still a point where someone can reasonably walk away. It hurts.
Right.
But can still reasonably walk away. Commingling your life for 5 years and getting married and staring down a divorce and everything that comes with it in the midst of everything else that is obviously going wrong, that's just kind of torturous. I don't think you have to go back into your poly closet or put poly back in the bento box and shove it back on the shelf. I just think you shouldn't have shoved it in a bento box and put it on a shelf in the first place.
Right. And, that's just the same as lying. It is. You lie to yourself. You lie to
yourself about who you can choose to be.
Right.
I think the intent to make it true was there. I think the desire for the relationship was there.
Right.
I just don't think that was how you were going to build a long-term, successful, healthy relationship.
Right.
And 5 years down the line, the rubber met the road was bumpy, and here we are.
Right.
Is that wasn't a reasonable thing. That wasn't a choice you could reason.
Right. And it's not a choice you should have reasonably made.
No.
Right.
So I feel bad for the partner of OP. I also feel horrible for OP. I think it's a giant, fluorescent highlighter of why you don't try to put poly in a bento box.
Right.
And shove it on the shelf.
Right. Or any other things in your life.
Or vice versa, you don't put effectively the solution posed here is for the first 5 years of our relationship, I shove my polyamory in a bento box and threw it on a shelf. Now it's your turn to take your monogamy, and shove it in a bento box and put it on a shelf. And somehow to each of them, this seemed like a good compromise.
Right.
Yet OP is having the sudden realization this is a horrible compromise.
Right.
Yeah, it was horrible when your partner did it.
Right.
So try to have some appreciation for that. I would think. It was a bad choice, but it was still a choice they made and lived with.
Right.
4 or 5 years. So there is something to be said there. So I don't want to totally hate on the partner of OP. But yeah, this is why you don't do that. There's no one coming to this post to tell you how wonderful Polly is, so much so that it's going to change your opinion.
And most are being sent to go, and most are saying go to therapy. Go to therapy. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're going to need it. Because you're not ready to divorce yet, but this relationship is over.
A time bomb.
Yeah. It's a matter of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I hate that for you. I know that the punches just keep coming.
Right.
But hopefully this is the end of a bad period.
Right.
This is the shit cherry on top of the shit covered sundae of things going on in your life. And then you move forward out of this with a new set of knowledge and towards someone that can be who you want to be.
Exactly.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. All right, so let's go check that poll.
All righty.
Ooh, you scored again. 100%. Nope, you are not the asshole.
There we go. There we go. Did well on that.
Yeah.
That's I do have to say though, that's one you have to kind of sit with for a minute. It's not exactly, to me it wasn't one you can immediately go, yeah, that's you're not the asshole. Like there's issues there.
Right.
Oh, so Brenda says it was a birthday gift, not just, hey, do you want these tickets? Mom basically took Morgan's birthday gift away. She did.
Right.
Oh yeah, so Brenda says Polly was one was definitely a dill pickle. It is. Mostly because like the framework around it is like, tell me you already know you're not going to get the response you want to hear.
Right.
Based on what you just said in your message to try to eliminate all the things you already know.
Right. And there are so many resources out there. There's so many happy poly couples out there. Like, we're not the only one out there. There's whole YouTube channels of it.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? Do your research.
Like, you can talk to people about polyamory. You may, connect with someone who had never thought about it or who didn't know some things. This seems like you know who you are.
Right.
You're pretty locked in. There's nothing. I don't know a single thing anyone who's this locked in can hear.
Right.
That goes,
right.
Here we go. So Brenda says they aren't shitty. They aren't wrong. They just tried to change who the partner was. Both are hurt. So dill pickle. And a dill pickle.
That's awesome. They have that emoji.
Yes.
Yes.
But no, and that's basically where that's at is,
Yeah.
I don't want to say no one can ever change. I'm just going, some parts of us, however.
Right.
We are who we are.
Exactly. And if you go into a relationship pretending to be not who you are and misleading the other party, it's not a relationship.
Although I will say it's super shitty.
Yeah.
Granted, has effectively already happened once in their relationship in one direction, which was, granted, still early on, and there was time to, slam on the brakes and throw it in reverse.
Right.
5 years into, like, you got married, you were 5 years down the road, turning around and saying that, that's a real shit ultimatum.
It is too. Okay, like both
I
of them
mean,
are shitty moves. Don't do it, people. Just don't. You know, when you go into relationships, be point blank. Lay it on the line. Lay out your expectations. Lay out your common grounds that you can negotiate with. But if they don't match up, catch the next fish.
yeah. Well, my biggest problem with the polyamory one is the fact that basically at the married and into a this far into a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
what you're really trying to say is, I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to divorce.
Right.
But you want it to be your partner's choice, that you
Right.
gave them the option to stay together. You didn't really want to get divorced,
Right.
but that's what they chose.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, no. OP's not going to be choosing a divorce.
Right.
It's in the shit salad you've handed them.
Right.
They picked the only option that they had, which was to not eat.
Right.
And that's basically what this is here's your shit salad.
Right.
I fed you. And
Right.
it's like, the only choice I have with that is to not eat it.
Right. You know, I cannot imagine you going, we're going mono.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, no.
Well, one, I mean, that would be so far off course for a relationship, it would be kind of ridiculous at this point.
Right.
But more to the point, like but I've been on the other end of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I'm speaking from experience. I've dated people that I thought we were a really good fit, but the one aspect that was there was a monogamy versus polyamory mindset.
Right.
And like, we've both had to make the choice that, like, this isn't going to work out.
Right.
Now, granted, I was trying really well with what limited language I had at that stage of my life,
Mm-hmm.
to communicate who I was, and I will say that's been an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Until Polly kind of got out there and we had a little more understanding, and people were, aware. So like, granted, it cut us all a little slack, but I was doing the best I could with the language I had,
Right.
to communicate who I was, and not getting hurt
Right.
by mono people who were like, that's the only option there is. Duh.
Nope.
And having to be like, I think there's something else, and so this is gonna work.
Right.
Like, I can't see this working. All it's gonna be is, I'm gonna hurt you, and you're gonna be mad at me.
Right.
So what are we doing except for spending, our future hurting each other?
Exactly. And, that's why it doesn't work. Rarely can, a mixed or mixed relationship orientation work, and it takes a lot of special situations.
I mean, there are mono people who do have relationships with polyamorous people. That, I will say, typically has to be more about how they want to date
Right.
and how they think relationships
Right.
ought to work.
Right.
And that's kind of a really down the rabbit hole understanding. I
Right.
will say that it's not impossible.
Right.
And there are those people. But like, that's a place you get to.
Mm-hmm.
Not usually where you start.
Right.
And that doesn't come out of an ultimatum. That comes out of a lot of work to
Right.
go, you know what, this relationship's important enough to me
Mm-hmm.
That I can, I'm willing to challenge myself.
Right.
And coming to a conclusion that I'm not polyamorous,
Right.
but other people are, and that doesn't hurt me.
Right. And, that's part of that growth, self-work, therapy that has to occur.
I will say it's kind of rare though. It's
Very.
some of them are so.
Yeah.
Like if you want your 98th percentile thereabouts of this situation, it doesn't work.
Right.
It will not work, and especially when you cap in, or like cap on how it's all coming out and evolving. This is not your 2% that makes it work.
Right.
This is your 98% fail rate.
Right.
Like this is not going to work
at all.
I mean, it's polyamory at gunpoint.
Right. And at this point, it's not even a nice gun.
No. It's very big, nasty, ugly gun.
Right.
Like super ugly gun. Been left in water. Kind of nasty. Could blow up on both of us.
Yeah.
Kind of gun.
Right. And that's when you know things aren't being thought out. They aren't being put together.
So I wish you both the best of luck.
Yeah.
There's no answers to be given. Besides, please find a therapist.
Find a therapist, get with a therapist, work a therapist out, work on yourself, because that has to be done. Like prano a mano.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good luck with that.
Yep.
All right. So
yeah. All right, guys. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back for Psychic Plans at 5 p.m. on Sunday. Until then, take it away.
All right. Well, there you go. Of course, we want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda, Shannon C, Shannon D, Lady Gwendolyn, Charles Shaw, Tracy Van, Caitlin Bell, and Devin. If you'd like to learn more about us, the show, or how you too can become a Patreon sponsor and receive all the wonderful benefits our baristas receive, please visit us at pcspnetwork.com.
Yep. All right, guys. We'll see you on Sunday.
Good night.